Well, back to these protests, the national stowaway that's being arranged by several organizations, including SAFTU and COSATU, against the high cost of living. Mametlwe Sebei is the president of the General Industry Workers Union of SA. They're part of SAFTU. Mametlwe, good afternoon to you. Why are you holding this protest? What are you going to do?
Well, I think we have characterized the crisis we are having in the country, but also I think across the world as, a crisis or rather a cost of living nightmare. And that is really because, the cost of basic food, but also energy, transport, and many other things that working class people need for their day-to-day living have risen, to astronomical proportions that are beyond affordability and have plunged many into levels of poverty we have not seen in decades. And that's the reason that we are protesting as unions, but also as communities and every progressive people in this country who think that we can't resolve the crisis that we are facing at the expense of working class people.
How does a protest or a national stowaway bring down the cost of living?
Well, it is really because in the final analysis, this is a crisis of capitalism. What is at the core of it? It is the fact that there is speculations in the food market, where, for instance, a lot of the cost of food are speculated in what you call the futures market, like, the maize that me and you are buying. You will find that it has been bought 10, 15 times before it even gets to the market and sold in stock exchange. That's what's driving the cost of the price of this good and so on. You look at oil companies, right? They've increased the profits. Major companies, the 5 top oil producers in this world, including including Total, including BP, the ones that we know in this country, have made a profit of about $50 billion in the first quarter alone. So there is profiteering that is happening. The prices of basic goods is not just the increase is not a natural calamity or something that we cannot do about. Government can do about some things about that, including regulations, but also we think that it can, cushion working class people by implementing basic income grants for the unemployed, as well as, of course, ensuring, increases in the wages of workers to ensure that they keep, in tandem with the increases in the prices and the cost of living.
Well, Mametlwe, I think I'll probably agree with you around fuel companies. I'll probably go a long way down the road with you on the basic income grant. I would also say, though, to disagree with you, let me put it to you. International capitalism has led to food being cheaper than at any time in human history, and communism, in countries where it's been tried, has only led to fuel shortages.
Firstly, there has not been a communist country in the world. Communism as a stage in the development, hasn't been seen anywhere, including in Soviet Union. What you see there, what you saw there, was obviously working class people taking power. Of course, nationalizing, the mines, the factories, the commanding heirs of the economy, putting them in public ownership in the first few years of that revolution on the basis of democratic working class control and management of the economy, but also of society through workers' council. But of course, there was counter-revolution there. That resulted in emergence of a monstrous bureaucratic dictatorship that suppressed the rise of working class people. Now, where under capitalism the market, regulate issues of quality, but also making sure that the things that we need are the things that are produced by the economy in the right proportion. In a publicly owned economy, that is a democratic control and participation in decision-making by the working class people. That is what was lacking in those particular economies, and as a result, there was a degeneration of those particular states, and of course, the counter-revolution and restoration of capitalism in Russia, the consequences of which we see not only in collapse in the living standards of the people of Russia, the collapse of industry, and of course, all the advances that we made under revolution, but also now a very brutal, imperialism whose brutality we see in Ukraine, but also the consequences of which are being felt by working class people, including here in South Africa, in the form of increases in prices, both of energy, but also of basic food.
So, Mametlwe, there's a lot to this, right? I would suggest that as things stand, never mind what we want, as things are right now, our government and most democratic governments around the world aren't able to control most of these problems. They can't control the fuel price, really. We don't have, oil in South Africa. They can't really control international food prices either. When you subsidize food, there are all sorts of consequences to that. Governments have tried it. There used to actually be food price regulation in South Africa through agricultural markets and through agricultural boards. But if you have price controls, you end up with people buying food in one country, smuggling it across a border into another country. And that's why I did not disagree with you around a basic income grant. Isn't that really the only possible solution?
Not at all. In fact, if you look at what's happening, it's not true. Firstly, it's not true that there's no oil in this country. Sasol is sourcing its oil from coal that, of course, is mined entirely in this country. Sasol was built by the public investment or investment, from the public fiscus of working class people in this country. Now, of course, today it has been privatized and, of course, is profiteering from this crisis, notwithstanding the fact that it is in no way affected by the war that is happening in Ukraine. And we would argue that on the basis of nationalization, both of the oil, companies, but also of the key sectors of the economy, including food manufacturers that are allowing speculation of food that is driving the prices and the cost of this basic necessity for the working class people beyond reach of many, that it will be possible not only to regulate pricing, but also to ensure that enormous, resources in these companies and in this industry, including food and energy, is supplied affordably, but also to ensure universal access to energy for all people on a democratic basis that is possible under capitalism.
Mametlwe, you come from an organization which belongs to SAFTU, your union. It seems that you and COSATU are working together. You don't always work together very well. You're working together here. Have you arranged things like dates and what kind of protests you'll be managing?
Yes, well, you would remember from our previous discussions that as COSATU, we initiated what you call a cost of living crisis campaign, and I think we've discussed it here before. It was on the basis of that we took the motion to SAFTU, but also, we raised the issue with COSATU, in addition to saying in the NEC of SAFTU that the SAFTU national office bearers must approach COSATU, and that we jointly organize, a national day of action or national shutdown, right? So there has been that communication, and I think we appreciate the fact that COSATU appreciate the need for united action and united front of this. We are appealing to other federations, NACTU, FEDUSA, and of course AMCU, to join in this action. More than that, we are doing everything to move heaven and earth to ensure that working class communities, we are speaking with many civic, federations of, mining affected communities, including Makua, Wamua, Sesmek, and others, to say that we need to unite as working class people, and we should, through all our organizations, community civics, youth and student movements, climate justice movements, we must coordinate to ensure that, of course, on that day, the economy comes to standstill so that we can force conversation in this country about how do you resolve the current crisis of the cost of living, but also how do you resolve other crises that we are having, because there's also issues of astronomical levels of unemployment that is devastating the entire generation of youth. There is a collapse in public service, not only in terms of housing, in terms of roads, but also we've seen during COVID how, our public health system is in complete shambles. So we want conversation about all of those issues. And we think that only a united and organized movement of the working class would resolve that. And that's the reason that we have approached the 24th of August in the way that we have. And we are saying that this will be the beginning. We would have to step up the campaign. We would have to have a program of road march actions in days and weeks to come.
Mametlwe Sebei, thank you, President of the General Industry Workers Union of South Africa. Well.